We're here to talk to Bijal, Vaccharajani and Supriya Sehgal today. They're two authors who have been writing for children on themes that are very significant in today's times. Bijal Vaccharajani is an editor at Pratham Books and also a journalist. She's written, So You Want to Know About the Environment, What's Nima Eating Today, and The Seed Savers. She's also co-authored The Great Indian Nature Trail, with Uncle Bicky and 10 Indian champions who are fighting to save the planet. She studied environment, security, and peace at the University of Peace in Costa Rica, and she is a certified climate warrior. Supriya Sehgal is a travel writer based in Mumbai. She's traveled far and wide, and she's done the most fantastic things that all children would love to hear about. Some only among them are swimming with sharks in Sri Lanka, flying in a four-seater aeroplane, with the window open in rainy Guyana. A tigress called Machli, and animal stories, other true animal stories from India, is her first book for young readers. I welcome you to this session, and tell me, if both of you had to describe your work, A Cloud Called Bhura and A Tigress Called Machli, to a 10-year-old child in 2 sentences, what would you say?
Supriya, tigers first.
Okay, all right. So, hi everybody. The book, as you know, the entire title of the book is so long and quite self-explanatory. These are 25 stories about animals from different parts of India and the relationship with humans around them. So it's about the love between them, and we'll have to find out more what we think.
My book is A Cloud Called Bhura. It's got one angry brown cloud. It's got a bunch of children who want to know why the cloud is so angry. And it's got one city that's besieged by this cloud. And it's a story about climate champions.
Thank you. I'm sure a lot of young readers would be waiting eagerly to hear more about your books. Tell me that the language that you use in your books identifies pretty strongly with an English-speaking colloquial that a teenager would use. So do you think to some extent that would limit your readership? And do you think you'd like to work on translations, or have you worked on translations in other languages to make your work more accessible?
Bijal, why don't you go first?
Yes, Gauri, actually, you're right. This book is for English-speaking children, and that automatically limits the audience. My day job, I work as an editor at Pratham Books, and one of the things that we're constantly trying to do is to get books out in mother tongue languages to children. So I actually feel really thrilled that I am able to create books, write them, as well as edit them, that we send them out in multiple languages. My book, What's Nima Eating Today, is available in print in 5 languages, but in multiple languages online. Yes, if somebody wants to pick up Bhura and translate it, I would be the happiest, because it would reach so many more children.
Thank you, Gauri. Sorry, I agree with Bijal that while the readership is for a certain kind of English-speaking kids, but we're hoping that with some sort of outreach that we have, like Valley of Words or any other school visits that we do, or meet people personally, if we're able to at least get the gist of the book out there so that the kids can explore their own backyard. And of course, the translation would be lovely. I mean, that goes without saying.
Okay. Supriya, tell me, travel writing for children is something that has been done abroad. But in India, where do you locate yourself in this genre, travel writing, especially for children?
Right, Gauri. So, I didn't write this out as a travel book for children, but I realized that children have a lot of decision-making in when people travel. So people travel keeping their convenience in mind, their entertainment in mind, activities in mind for children. And the children have a huge say. So while it's not meant to be a travel book per se, it's used as the backdrop of travel. I'm hoping that when these kids get to travel to a particular destination, they recall these stories and insist on going to meet that particular person or that animal in the environment. But you're right, yeah, it's not something that India is looking at, but I feel like that's a huge space that we could cover in the future as well. My second book called Let's Go Adventuring is just about that. It sharply points out to specific activities and destinations that kids would impact in their holiday decisions or bring up in conversations with their parents. So I'm hoping to kind of tap on this genre if it were to be a genre at all.
Yeah. Bijal, your take on the government machinery in a cloud called Bhura is interesting, and at times it's hilarious also because Mota Bhai and Nagar Nikam. So this trope has been around for a long time, for decades, in fact, in India and also in the UK where there was Yes Minister. So, but do you really think that over so many years also we have not the system hasn't given anybody reason to see it in a different light? How do you look at it?
At this point, children have filed public interest litigations against the governments in different countries and are standing and bunking school on Friday to protest for their future. So I do think that the governments need to actually get their act together, get the state machinery working to make sure that these children have a future. A lot of Bhura's government machinery comes from having worked, uh, having been a witness to some of it, and also from conversations I've heard people have about statesmanship, and a lot of it has filtered in. And what's amazing to me is that when I take Bhura to children, they actually recognize characters very easily, and especially political characters, civic characters, media characters. And it just shows me that how engaged today's generation is in some ways. To be able to stand outside and protest for a better future takes a lot of courage and conviction. And which is why I do think that there's a lot more for the governments to do across the world for, especially when it comes to climate change.
Okay. Supriya, you succeed in making a lot of things palatable to children. For example, things which would be hard to explain to them, like the jackals eating out of Lord Dattatreya's body. And you presented it in a way that a child would read it and not feel alarmed or not feel threatened or insecure in any way. Do you think it's a good idea for adults to once in a while dip into children's literature and so break down those walls that we tend to build in and around our psyches?
You know, Gauri, such a fun thing that you're bringing this up. I've had more adult readers get back to me and say that, by the way, I bought this for my kid and we had, he or she really liked it. But we've had such a fun time reading this and kind of tuning back to mythological stories or, sort of, go back to times when we were so in tune with nature. So the book, while it's meant for 8 to 11 years old, I've had readers far beyond that age come back and say that this was a great sort of refresher or, like we talk about the Bikaner temple with the 5 rats there. Everyone's heard of that and have possibly experienced that. So they've loved reading and going back to those stories again.
Okay. Bijal, there's this bit about Setu Pandit in your book, and he's the godman who actually wishes that cloud Bhura should not go away. So that is again this trope of a greedy godman and who allows just about anything to be capitalized on. Do you think over the years the idea of this greedy godman was pretty prevalent in our society and various cultures across our country? Do you think it has waned and weakened over the years, or do you think it's still pretty strong?
I'm going to say look at the headlines and the answers are right there for us to see. The more things change, they remain the same. And I do think that in some ways, religion is a very powerful tool to combat climate change, as we've seen that the Pope has done. And we need to see more and more leaders standing up for advocating change and advocating backing greener policies and all of that. And they do have a seat of power in many ways. So which is why for me, I don't think it's got its devolved in any way. It has devolved for sure. I don't think it has evolved much. And so, unfortunately, in some ways, Bhura has tried to be a slice of life for what I have seen impacts the way people perceive climate change.
Mhm. And what would both of you say to the use of drawings for children's books? Both of you have used some sort of line drawings, and Bijal, you've also used a lot of newspaper cuttings and a lot of things that a child would imagine. So, how do you think this works for a book for children? Do you think it simplifies things, or do you think it makes it more attractive?
So I work with picture books as well, and I've come to realize that the power of the illustration is very, very much so. We live in a very visual world now. Children are surrounded by media in different forms, and as younger children, they have to learn to read. They have to teach themselves. They're taught the alphabet. They're taught the letters and all of that, but they know how to see and to be able to interpret that. So, which is why illustrations play a big role. Of course, Bura is for older children. It's for almost a middle grade to young adult audience. And one of the things that I was very clear from the beginning, I wanted it to kind of mirror a child's world. So, children listen to snippets of news. They see newspapers lying around. They see magazines. They have bulletin boards in schools where they see thought for the day, and they go through websites. Their tablet is one of their closest friends in many ways. So I wanted to mirror that, and Oindri, who illustrated this book, and Maithili Doshi, who art directed it, they both did a fantastic job of making them very cool in many ways, and denoting what a child, a young adult almost would see without actually making them feel they're reading a book for younger children.
Supriya, how do you look at drawings in your book?
Right, Gauri, I think I can't thank Meena and Jit enough for really lifting it up. So, because these stories have so much context to the destination that they're rooted in. So, if a child has not traveled to first, say, Mehrangarh, or haven't been to the interiors of Chhattisgarh, for example, it's very difficult to imagine that environment. And while I've tried a lot in words to bring that environment to them, naturally it really lifts the book. It supports it, gives so much context that I think it's really essential. And it also breaks monotony from a very, visual frame of mind. So exactly what Bijal said, that I think it's essential. I think adult books should have also, should have illustrations as well. So to me, I can't thank my illustrators enough for this.
That's an interesting thought. Yeah, adult books with illustrations might work well too. You use a lot of suggestion boxes in your stories, Supriya. So how do you think that works? It makes your story crisper, and it gives that additional bit of information. So do you think it would work as well if you integrated the two? If you brought in the information in the suggestion box right into your story, do you think that would work as well? Because this works really well. But just your thoughts on an alternative.
Right. Sorry, actually, that was the idea, that here's where we are trying to build this affinity with animals. So animal welfare is such a talked about topic at this point of time. A lot of people are imbibing it, especially in tier 1 cities and for this readership. So the action to it would be the follow-up of this book, which is what I really intended to do. And therefore, those little snippets of boxes, do a little project, do a little donation here, ask your parents, let's go to an animal welfare, facility. Those are kind of things we wanted to instigate and leave it there. It's only a spark. I do hope that some kids have actually actioned upon it. We did see a lot of resonance when we were talking to kids at school, and they did say that, hey, I went to that particular animal welfare facility after reading it. So we were hoping to do that, and it did happen. So I'm very happy about it.
Okay. So a question for both of you. Human interaction with animals, with the environment, tends to have a lot of emotive moments, very powerful emotions. For example, when an end is anticipated or a relationship's coming to an end, a child whose horse dies and he's learned how to ride on that horse, or a pet whose health is deteriorating because of a toxic cloud. Do you think when you write for children that you try to temper the starkness of such ends, or do you try to build on them so as to drive home a point? How do you look at it?
Supriya, you want to go first? I'll go next.
I really think that children are quite resilient and much more than what we think. And they never want any narrative to be dumbed down for them. I think Bijal, who's written for kids for so long, would know that the best. So if there are harsh realities that are connected to this, for example, we had a challenge of appreciating the fact that there's a gentleman who has a relationship with monkeys and feeds them for 30, 40 years, but we don't want to encourage that. I mean, sorry, I'm going on a tangent here. We don't want to encourage that, but we put it as it was. We said you should not do this. And therefore, if there was a death involved, if there was deterioration of health involved, we say it up front. And I feel kids, even if they feel bad, they're resilient and they take that reality as it is and move on pretty quickly. So for me, I didn't have to add too many dimensions of this sort, but I think it didn't pose any challenge, or I didn't see any sinking or sulken faces after this. So we were good.
I remember asking the same question to Jerry Pinto Gauri once. He sent me back 2 words, and it said lemon stickers. And these are these insanely popular books, which everything bad that can happen to this three siblings happen. And the fact is that children, every time I do a writing workshop with children, by the end of it, almost all the characters have died. It's quite amazing. So somebody slapped someone, somebody's fallen off something. It's super how they see, how they define their fiction in many ways. And also we come up with fairy tales which are really dark if you look at it in many ways. Because of that, I think, but the most important thing for us only is that darkness needs to be tempered with hope. So when you write something that's dark, when writing for children, put in the bare truth, because children can take it, as Supriya said. I always want to put in a bit of hope, because that's what keeps children moving, right?
Okay. Bijal, crackers made Bhura fatter than it was. And when you look at the debate between the same action done by a Western country and done by, say, us in India, like bursting firecrackers, and firecrackers on New Year's Eve in the West and firecrackers on Diwali night in India, when you look at that debate, do you think the opposition gets reconciled when you look at climate change as a global phenomenon? Because these debates tend to recur every year and there are comparisons made. So how do you look at it? I mean, when we look at climate change as a totally global issue, do these debates die out, and does the issue get reconciled, or do you think it still lives on?
I mean, I think if you're going to talk about climate change with the global south and the global north, we all recognize the common but differentiated responsibilities when it comes to climate advocacy, of course. But the fact is that I think we're at a time in Earth's history in many ways that I think these are debates that don't need to be argued anymore. These are just facts that we now need to figure out on what side. There's no side. We're all on the living side, and we've shown that this pandemic has shown that to survive we will do what we need to, and climate change is perhaps one of the biggest threats. So whether it's global north, whether it's global south, we're going to have to start rolling up our sleeves and saying no to certain things, for sure.
Mm-hmm. So you write of people, Supriya, like Vijay and Shekhar, and you just mentioned Vijay who fed the monkeys, Shekhar who fed the parrots. So people who alter their very lifestyle so that they can continue this connect with animals. And Bijal, you write of children who give up school, and you mentioned it a while back also, who give up school to create a wave in favor of climate. in favor of supporting the climate and against human intervention that causes climate change. So, do you see yourselves as participants in a culture of kindness, a return to that culture of kindness towards animals, towards the environment? Because historically, if we look back at our country's ancient past, we've had, there's been Panchtantra stories, and there's always been a connect with nature. But somewhere down the line, maybe call it development or call it what you will, there's been a bit of a disconnect. So, do you think you're active participants in creating and helping that culture of kindness towards the environment to sustain?
I do hope so, Gauri. That was real, the definitive point of my book, at least, that empathy with animals remains intact. Of course, also suggesting that practically something should not be done, like feeding wild animals. But definitely creating that connect back for children to not have that gap, or not be, for example, we talk a lot about snakes in this book because snakes are such dreaded creatures, and I personally feel so scared. But to bring them in good light for the kids to understand that it's all part of the environment and how do you handle this difficult situation. So I really do hope that there's some trigger of hope and positivity in that connection and going back to the roots, like you said. That was really the point of the entire book. So, yes.
So I used to work with animals very actively, Gauri, and India has some really powerful animal laws, which gives me a lot of faith, and it has helped animals immensely. We've been able to be part of lots of rescues, and I've seen animals' lives change because of these policies. And I think the way I engage in the culture of kindness has changed from doing very active hands-on animal work to actually creating narratives around it. So one is, of course, while I write, I also am working actively with writers and illustrators to create books with compassion at their core, because I strongly feel that stories have a lasting impact, and what we tell and children listen when when these stories are told to them. And I believe in children power without a doubt. So my I've changed my track slightly. Now it's like, here, take a book, read it, and we know that you grow up to be a compassionate citizen.
Okay. In a way, when you're talking about masks, Bijal, and bronchial issues in your book, you've sort of anticipated what's happening to us right now due to COVID. And you also mentioned staycations, and you mentioned the divide between the well-off and the not so well-off, which is again something that we are living out in the present day. Do you anticipate that there will be writing on meddling with nature in the next 2 to 3 years? Do you anticipate more work on these issues?
It's really interesting that you asked that. Internationally, it's being called the Greta Thunberg effect, where publishers are actively looking for nature stories and for children demanding for a better future. I am not sure about India yet. I think that you see a lot more nature stories for younger children, but as you grow older, you see lesser stories for children. And Supriya's, for instance, is one of them. Bulbul Sharma, Ranjit Lal, Arefa are people who write about nature, but you can count them on your hands. And so I am not the most optimistic of people. So, I think working in climate change makes you like that. But I do think that slowly we're realizing that we need to tell these stories urgently. And the pandemic has been perhaps a trigger for people to think that. So I'm cautiously optimistic that we will see more. And I hope we see more celebration of nature stories and not just the gloom and doom stories.
Okay.
You're
Finally,
right. But I hope it's not just a topical thing. Sorry, Gauri, I cut you short. I hope it's not just a topical thing that people actually speak about and, get inspired by. I hope it's a more long-lasting effect. You're right.
Yeah, my friends blame me. They're like, listen, yeah, your book has things like masks and all, and now we're living with it. What is this? So, yes.
Predomination.
yeah, it's almost uncanny, but it's also interesting because maybe we were leading to that in any case. If it wasn't COVID, it would have been a cloud called Bura, who knows? So, yeah, it's pretty interesting how both of you are bringing things together. But would you agree that our relationship with nature has been largely an extractive relationship? And so, the kind of work that both of you are doing, do you think it needs to be a part of mainstream school curricula somewhere? Do you think that would help to heal this major crevice that has emerged in human nature relationships? Do you think it would help if works like yours and yours would be a part of school curriculum?
I really do hope so, Gauri, because any amount of writing, whether it's about nature or anything else, where empathy is at the core, like Bijal mentioned, how can it not have long-lasting effects? I remember in school we have to have a period which was all about only sharing stories or sharing experiences which had empathy at the core. And I feel like after decades of school, that really plays on my mind even till date. The exact words resonate in my head. So definitely moving out of super technology driven things, but coming back to the roots, talking about things that really matter, whether it's in the space of animal welfare, nature, or anything else. I think that should be really, really a big part of the curriculum.
You can only mirror what Supriya is saying, and Gauri, teachers like you are perhaps one of our best soldiers. Like everyone says now, these are our celebrities. Honestly, for us, teachers and librarians are our celebrities, because you all are the ones who take books to school, who invoke nature magic in children. So if it's put into the curriculum and into the right hands of the right educators, I think it can create wonders.
Yeah, I'm not a teacher, but yes, I'm a trainer of sorts. So you can draw a parallel there. So tell me a little bit about how you got to writing in the first place. And since there are themes that predominate in your work, where is all this coming from? And are there childhood experiences for the benefit of our young readers? Share something from your past that has really led you to write like this for children.
Bijal, want to go first?
Okay. So I grew up in with a house where my mom would keep rescuing animals and bringing them home to take care of them and then taking them back. And then we moved from Delhi to Mumbai, and I was just like, "Where are my squirrels? I can't see any squirrels." And the only solace that I had in this little house with grills outside it and fully boxed in feeling after Delhi's big houses was this magnificent gulmohar tree outside my house. And I would stare at it for ages, looking at parakeets, looking at little insects, and all of them who would visit that tree. And I would pour my heart out into a journal, into a diary, saying "Dear Diary," just like Betty Cooper did, because that's all I knew to do. And I was a very shy child, so my friends were actually books, my diary, and that big tree outside my house. And that's when I kind of knew, like, when I graduated, I started working in animal welfare because it was what I really cared about. I knew that this was where my path was going. My family's full of bankers, and I was just like, yeah, I can't do maths. Only I didn't know that when you do writing and editing, maths is in everything. So, children, if you're listening, then maths is in everything. But it was these little childhood influences. My mother, my the tree outside my house, and all the many, many animal people I met along the way. They've all made me realize writing about it is so crucial.
So true, Bijal. It's exactly the same. Incidentally, Gauri, I grew up in Dehradun. I'm from Dehradun. So we had the opportunity to stay in a house that had a sprawling garden in front, a big cow shed at the back, and mango trees and orchards and things like that. So post school, the hot afternoons were absolutely outside, digging out worms. It was literally out of a book. And I think that kind of really sets the tone for inspirations later. While writing this book, I really felt like I was going back to that environment again and again. Like Bijal, my mom is also a big saver of animals. She would find a little puppy on the street, injured something, even a snake at some point of time, and would come and kind of tend to them. We grew up around big, bad bhutia dogs all the time, sheru after sheru after sheru, as you can imagine, in Dehradun. So I think all this environment really kind of must have played a part really in growing up. Also, my sister, my brother-in-law are passionate animal lovers. My husband and I now foster cats, so we try and stay as connected as we can and do whatever we can. So yeah, but I think just the growing up part was a huge, huge influence, on the writing now, especially for this book.
And what advice would you have for young readers with they're growing up in a difficult time? Leave out COVID, even then the kind of pressures that children have on them these days are perhaps a lot more than my generation did when we were children. So, do you think that being more in touch with nature, with the environment, with animals would actually help sustain healthy mental life? What advice would you want to give to
Right,
children?
it's such a refuge, isn't it? It's such a refuge to be in a place which is not, you're not wired up all the time, whether it's your laptop, whether it's a screen time. And I find that actually kids don't need to be told that time and again. A lot of them already realize the value of the parents are bringing up kids in a very wholesome manner, especially where books are concerned. I don't think I had so much exposure to books as kids these days do. So I'm very hopeful about it, and I think there's much for us to learn from them than the other way around.
Uh, Rachel Kahn, one of my favorite authors, said this really fantastic thing about how every child needs this one adult to foster their inherent sense of wonder. And in doing so, it also opens their mind to, they see the world anew from a child's eye. And so I do think that as adults, it's our responsibility to foster that sense of wonder, because children are naturally curious. And in this pandemic, I think a lot of people have found hope from looking outside their windows and balconies. And there's no reason to not continue that, because otherwise, we know that mental deficit or disorder is actually a thing which children and adults can suffer from. And so we have to be part of that revolution of getting, not right now, but in the future, children outdoors and having conversation with trees and birds as well.
Is it possible for you to say that you enjoyed writing a particular book more than you did the other? Is one of your works very dear to you? And if yes, then why would that be? And if no, then also why?
That's blasphemy. Cannot say that. No, but yeah, and actually, I think there was the experience of having met somebody who you connected with more takes you back to the time that you were traveling and writing. So yeah, I did feel like certain stories were more fun to write, or the journey back in time was more fun to kind of revisit. For me, Ismail on the Mehrangarh fort, who comes 3 o'clock every afternoon to chuck goat pieces from the wall where kites come swooping down to eat them, is a scene that is so glamorous to me as a visual, that to me I really liked writing that particular story once again, or revisiting that once again. Yeah, other than that, I feel it would be really not so fair to say that one story might be better than the other. But certainly, I think The Tiger's Called Machli is the first book that I have written for kids, and therefore enjoyed that much better than the second book as well. The process was new to me. Writing for kids, the language, everything was new to me. So it was thrilling.
I think my favorite time I don't have a favorite book in that sense. I have a favorite time, which is when I'm dreaming up the book. And then when I actually start writing it is when everything goes downhill, where I start hating everything I'm writing. And then when it goes to the editor, I'm just one of those neurotic people who's gone into a bundle, like I'm in a puddle of like sweat. And then when the book comes out, it gets even worse. The puddle becomes a flood. So my favorite time is actually when I'm dreaming up the book, and after that, it's all downhill.
Right. Bijal, Supriya, it's been wonderful talking to you. And just so you know, I bought a copy of your books and I've really enjoyed reading them. So I'm sure children will too, and connect with them even better in their own ways. But as an adult, nearly touching her 40s, I really enjoyed your books. So thank you so much for your time, and thank you for talking to me. Okay,
Thank you so
Bye.
much.
Good evening.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.